What does the future of the Jedi Order look like? In canon, we've never been able to see what the future Jedi Orders looked like with Luke Skywalker rebuilding the Order from the ground up. We've only ever seen this in legends in the past, but nothing exists within the canon that Disney has established. Now, despite the negative response to the sequel trilogy, Disney is still making a Rey Solo film. Not Rey Solo, but Rey Skywalker, I guess. If you are a fan of the sequels, then you're probably pretty excited, but for those who aren't and think that it should just be retconned, at this time, I seriously doubt Disney will admit they dropped the ball and retcon the whole sequel trilogy. I do believe that with Dave and Jon Favreau overseeing the direction of these stories, and with a solid writer, we can get a pretty good movie with Rey as the main character. Hey, editor me here. I actually just read that the writer for Peaky Blinders is going to be writing this, which is pretty interesting because that show was actually really good. And I thought the writing was pretty tight on that, so we'll see. Anyway, back to it. But with how much hate these sequels get, this project might just get immediately review bombed. This film already has a lot going against it, so Disney's going to have to put in a lot of work to get the original fans back and support this project. But what is this movie going to look like? Well, we know the Rey movie is going to follow Rey. She rebuilds the Jedi Order 15 years after the events of Rise of Skywalker, using the training from Luke Skywalker and the texts from the ancient Jedi. But first, I got some questions, like, who's going to be with Rey? Are we going to see Finn finally become a Jedi, or is this going to be her solo adventure? Most likely we'll see BB-8, we might get some characters from the sequel trilogy. I really hope that they don't try to just squeeze in a whole bunch of stuff into this movie. Like, I don't really need to see what Poe Dameron's up to, or Lando Calrissian, anything like that. I mostly want this to just focus on Rey. This is her movie, this is her story. And I'm also curious to how Force ghosts are going to play into all this. You know, how much are they going to take part in shaping the new order? A lot of uncertainty comes from that, because we know that Luke, Leia, Anakin, Obi-Wan, Yoda, and Qui-Gon Jinn can appear as Force ghosts. Now, all of these Jedi have different ideas of what the Jedi Order should look like, and I'm curious to see if there's going to be any of that in this movie, or if they're going to just kind of set aside Force Ghosts in general, because it is a little OP if they could just spam Force Ghosts the whole time. You'll have a bunch of Force Ghosts teaching young Jedi, like it's Harry Potter, which could be cool, but also seems kind of broken. Remember, the Force is all about balance, and once the Force becomes unbalanced, it will correct it. If there's too much light, it'll introduce darkness for balance. And I'm curious if the dyad that she had with Ben is going to play a part in this at all, or if it's just completely gone. And I'm also very curious about the characters whose fate is unknown. Now, this takes place 15 years after the events of Rise of Skywalker. If my math adds up, that's going to be around 50 years after the end of the Empire. For example of time frame, that would put Luke, if he were still alive, around 70 years old, and that would have Ahsoka approaching 90 years old. Similar with Cal Kestis. And there are other characters too that we don't know the fate of, such as Jason Syndulla, the son of Kanan Jarrus. We don't know what his fate is. I mean, he could have died in Luke's school, or he could have been kept from becoming a Jedi. He could have done something completely different. We don't know. And spoilers for Jedi Survivor, Cal Kestis, he takes on a young Jedi apprentice at the very end, and we don't know where that story is going to go either. Are these potential characters that we could see pop back up in the Star Wars timeline? Assuming Ezra survives, he could come back as an old Jedi Master. But I'm really curious to see how they handle that. And I'm really curious to see if there's going to be a new Sith threat. But I think one of the biggest questions that most everyone is going to have is, what is the fate of Grogu? This will put Grogu over the age of 100. And if we remember what Yoda said, Yoda was training Jedi for 800 years by the time he passed away, and he was 900. So are we going to see a more grown-up version of Grogu training young Jedi? What will happen with Din Djarin? It's safe to assume that around this time, Din Djarin has passed away either from old age or losing a fight. We still don't know what his fate will be. It would be interesting to see possibly a mature Grogu maybe leading Mandalorians, which leads to my next question: what will be the new threat? Are we going to get new Sith? Is the new threat going to be the Galactic Republic? Are we going to get a Grisk or some other unknown species? Or are we going to get another Jedi Mandalorian war? Where do they want this story to go? But also, what will Rey do differently? I think a lot of original fans are bummed to see that Rey is going to be doing what we all wanted to see Luke do from the start. I hope that he still plays a part in the New Order, at least a little bit. There are a lot of things as a fan that I really want to see in this movie or from the future Jedi Order in general. First being, I want to see Rey learn about the history of the Jedi and question their teachings. See where past Jedi Orders have gone wrong. Take a look at what it really means to be a Jedi. But I want her to also have genuine struggles, conflict. I want to see her maybe doubt herself or doubt the Jedi Order or doubt the idea of there being a Jedi Order in the first place. Maybe we can build onto the lore in an interesting and satisfying way without completely ruining the history of Star Wars. And I think that's where we're going to have to really trust Dave Filoni and the teachings that he learned from George Lucas. And I would also be really interested to see Rey learn more about the dark side, learn about her dark past. I mean, she is a descendant of Palpatine, one of the strongest dark side users in history. There's a lot of really interesting things that we could learn from that. And I'm also curious to see if we explore the Force dyad she had a little bit more. You know, give us some answers to stuff that we're not sure about. And lastly, I just want to see some really good lightsaber fights. I think they are doing a lot better with the lightsaber duels in shows like Ahsoka, but I do see comments about how the fighting just doesn't look the same as it used to within the prequels. And that's due to who they had doing the choreography during the prequels, Nick Gillard. Now, it'd be cool to see him come back to Star Wars. I know that Star Wars Theory pushes this quite a bit, and I agree, it would be cool to see, but I don't really have that many complaints about the fighting that we've seen recently. Now, overall, I think that they can tell an interesting story and possibly fix some of the character issues with Rey, as long as they have a plan. See, where they dropped the ball with the sequels, they didn't have a plan throughout the whole trilogy. It was film by film, and we saw how that went.
It's the biggest piece of dog shit.
With Dave Filoni and Jon Favreau being more a part of where they take Star Wars, I think that we are headed in a better direction. There is still some interesting choices here and there, but for the most part, I like what I'm seeing. I think they just need to give her a really good arc and journey to go on. Give her some really good character progression, show how she's different, show how she's going to do things differently, and overall just tell a more grounded story. You know, it doesn't need to build onto something bigger and bigger. We don't need it to be like an MCU movie. We don't need a million cameos to remind us that Star Wars used to be really good. We just need to focus on the story at hand. Tell a good story first and then add on to it later. There are some nostalgia bait things that can be introduced in a meaningful way that build onto the lore, add to the story, add to her overall character arc. But with that said, I'll give it a chance. Only time will tell. But for now, that's it. Until next time, see ya.